Actually, don't click. Okay. Regarding the hold button, or the hold checkbox right here, this hold functionality is if an employee has already resigned or has been terminated, then what that means is that, of course, it's a clearance period, right? That clearance period allows them to process all their final pay, their leaves, whatever it might be, and then that's why if you click the hold, then their payroll will not be computed anymore, however long it takes for the clearance to take. So it's a great feature to hold them until then. So let's say, for example, the clearance has taken place. They're cleared. They're not an employee anymore, an active employee. You would uncheck the hold. So let me just check this as if it was checked already. Okay, you uncheck it already like this. That means they're not on hold anymore. But now that they are not employed, you must go to the active box. And the active box, you would uncheck the active box, meaning they're inactive. So the file still stays in the system, so you can have future references for HR purposes. Or they might come back to work for you again. So you just check boxes to make them active again. So that's the difference between the two. So what you would place here, of course, is their basic pay. What's their basic pay? Right now, our particular example is per day. As you can see right here, the per day is connected to this payroll group I mentioned earlier. This payroll grouping that I mentioned earlier, that I will explain more maybe a little bit later. But what this is for is that, let's say it's semi-monthly. So then what would happen would be, this will show up as semi-monthly if you have the payroll grouping as a semi-monthly grouping. Okay, so right now it's set per day. So other information that you would require, of course, is the allowances, if there are any. And then you've got there the de minimis. Now this de minimis is depending on the country of origin, but in Asia there's a feature for de minimis. I'm not sure if other countries would have that, but we will look at that more in detail in other videos. And then of course staff meals, because sometimes you give staff meals. So you might have, let's say, if they work overtime, there's a staff meal. If there's a staff meal every day, there's a staff meal. So you would say here, for example, 100. If you're using $100 or 100 pesos or 100 won, whatever country you're in, it would be 100, okay? Now, there's a function here called for COLA, okay? We'll come back to that one. I forgot what COLA stands for.
Cost of living allowance?
There you go. Not Pepsi. Now we have COLA. This COLA here stands for cost of living allowance. Now, the government sometimes mandates that there's a 10% COLA or a 5% or whatever it might be, and there's a setting in there for that. But this is how you activate it for this particular employee. Okay? I'll uncheck it for the time being. Then, of course, for HR purposes, you've got here the rank and file. They could be supervisor, officer, manager. You can say what they are. Let's say rank and file for now. This little alert in days that you see on the very far right hand side of your screen, what that is there for is, let's say for example I place here 30. Okay, 30 means that from the date of hire, this will say, for example, date of hire and the date of regularship. This will remind you that 30 days before they are regularized, that this employee is coming up for that. So this gives you that 30 days, for example, to reevaluate them. Are they worthy of being a permanent employee or off probation? So this is a good reminder. It's a great feature to have, because sometimes a lot of companies would especially a lot of employees, like 200, 300, 400, 500 employees, it's easy to lose track of which ones are coming up for probation processing or probation review. Okay, so it's a great feature to have. And then, of course, after that, we have, of course, the employment status here. This could be, are they a contractual employee, meaning they're only going to 6 months or 1 year contract with you. You have a probationary, regular, executive officer, agency, and seasonal, because especially if you're in the service industry, like the hotel or restaurant, sometimes the jobs are only open in the summertime or in the peak seasons of that particular industry. So you would not you would only hire seasonal employees. This employee may be that particular category, so that's how you designate them. You also have your tax status. The tax status is based on each particular government's mandated taxes, depending on the company. I think the majority of them come withholding taxes, okay, or your government taxes. Depending on the setup. In this particular setup, this is more Asian right now, but we do have setups also for other particular countries. But this one here, for example, if you're a single employee, a single one means, or S1 means single with one dependent, single with two dependents, you have two children, or two designated employees. It could be your grandmother, but you must file them with the government, of course, but they have to be mandated by the government policies. But once they are, you tag it as S2. And then further down, you got married employee, married with two children, three children, and so on. And then the government taxes will be automatically calculated by the software based on your setting. Okay. After that, of course, you place the number. So let's say, as I said earlier, this particular version is set up for an Asian setup, and other ones have other countries have different names. But this one here is TIN. It's a tax identification number, but every country has that anyways. So it depends on what country of origin that you're from. The tax identification number, you just type it in there, whatever it might be. Depending on the country again, this SSS, of course, this is more a social security system. You've got the Pag-ibig, and this is Asian or Filipino more particular. This different mandated government agencies for housing, loans, and so on. Okay, so I don't get great detail. The last here is PhilHealth or Philippine Health, but other countries have the same thing. Okay, but the bottom line is you put a number of that particular employee for each government mandated agency. I'm just putting some sample numbers in here just for the example. And then all it does is it follows the table. Now let me just kind of go to the table really quickly. The table of the government can be encoded into the system. What we have here, for example, here is, let me just kind of go to it right now. This is your tables, okay? Now these tables are given by the government every year, every 2 years, 3 years, because sometimes there are changes that happen, but they're here, so you can see it for the withholding tax. In this case, the Philippines is SSS contributions, and lastly, you got the PhilHealth, okay? If you notice now, none of this is editable. You can see it, it looks like Excel or some sort of spreadsheet. It doesn't mean you've edited. This is for your protection. In the past, this has been opened and you were allowed to encode this yourselves, but there's a lot of things that are moving parts here. If you encode it wrong, there's a retroactive consequence, and it could really mix up your database. So it's better that we will be the ones to update that for you. If you have a maintenance agreement with us, it's complimentary and it's part of the package. Okay? So moving further on, that's easy to figure out. So, but we also have another function called adjustment. These are the 4 little boxes right here. What these 4 boxes means is you check box one of them. In this case, I'm going to check box the SSS field. What that means is it will ignore the government mandated table, okay? And what ends up happening is you could encode your own employee share and employer share. So in this particular case, I'll put 200, and the employer share will be, let's say, 400. Why you would do that, it depends on the situation. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but some examples could be, maybe you under-deducted or you over-deducted accidentally. You had the wrong setting for them. This is one way to make up for that difference, or to take back what it should not have been taken from them to begin with. Or, for example, you have a special arrangement with that particular employee. They want you to deduct more than what the government asks you to be deducted. For whatever reason, we do not know why. Okay? Now, moving further on, you place the account number of that employee as well. So this is for if you're paying your employees by ATM, you're not giving them cash, it'll automatically deposit it into that account based on the bank file that you have to give to the bank. Okay? And then of course here you can place here what kind of bank it is. Okay? What is the name of the bank? If the bank is, let's say, in this particular country, we have a BPI for Bank of the Philippines and so on. If you're in Canada, you might have Toronto Dominion Bank, you might have Royal Bank. It depends on what bank you're using or what country that you're in. You have these other little check boxes here. Let me cover them really quickly. This is called minimum wage earner checkbox. What that is, for example, on my left side here, minimum wage earner, In the Philippines especially, because it's an archipelago of different islands all spread out throughout the whole entire ocean here, each region has different minimum wage, because depending on if you're closer to the metropolis of Manila, you get a higher wage than if you're into more the provincial setting. The wage is a little bit lower as a standard government mandated salary amount. So in the Philippines in particular, there is a minimum wage earner rule, meaning if you make minimum wage, there is no tax. That's why it's very vital, if this particular employee is a minimum wage earner, you must click checkbox minimum wage earner. That will exclude them from the taxes to be deducted. That's all it is. And then next you have your disregard dates in minutes, as you can see here. Disregard dates in minutes. What that is, for example, let's say I check box like I just did now, and I have, let's say, 15 minutes, or you have 1 or 20 minutes. You're now programming the software to do this. If this particular employee is late 20 minutes, it'll disregard their late. It will not deduct them from any salary amount like normally you would. If you're late, you're deducted depending on how many minutes you're late. In this case, it will be excluded from you. We have a feature in the software that can make a company-wide policy a 15 minutes grace period